Welcome to the Power Trip After Party podcast. I'm Corey Cove. There's Meat Sauce Paul Lambert. Hi, Sauce.
Hi, Daddy.
Well, were the in-the-box questions too hard? They thought you were going to hate me for those questions.
No, they weren't. I
wanted to switch it up a little bit, make like challenges kind of, can he do this in X amount of time?
I should have got the fireman bit. That was stupid of me, but yeah, no, they weren't too hard.
Okay, just checking. They're like, he's going to hate you. I don't know why I did that in your voice.
Oh.
Anyway, this is the Power Trip After Party podcast. Sauce, you invited Chef Gavin Kaysen in for a couple of reasons. Hi, Gavin.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Number one, we love having you on. Even though I eat like I'm 6, I still think your world is fascinating. Number two, we've both watched The Bear Season 2, so we had a whole bunch of chef-related questions based on what we saw in Season 2.
Yeah.
And then also, the Taste of the Tour is right around the corner, and you're a huge part of that.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's start with the Taste of the Tour.
Okay.
Tell us what's happening, how you're involved. I know you're going to be out of the country for part of it sounds like, but walk us through what Taste of the Tour is. We've talked about it for years on this show, but if people haven't heard it in the past, what is it?
So it's an organization that raises money for Veep. It's on July 24th. And then, so every year I invite a group of chefs, and we do a dinner for a couple hundred people. They have incredible auction items. There's great celebrities, sports celebrities. You know, Jason's obviously, there are so many. But you have Jamie Malone from the Paris Dining Club, Yia Vang from Union Hmong Kitchen, Tony Yang and Martine Morelli, who are both from Four Seasons. Tony's the chef of Mara, and Martine is the executive chef of the hotel, and David Fima from Fima's and his newly opened Maison Margot. Desserts are provided by my team at Cook's Belcourt. It's a great event. We've done it every single year. We do it at Interlochen Country Club. I have a blast. Unfortunately, this year I'll be out of the country, so I can't be there. But we're sending our teams to go in and do some cooking, and honestly, it's like it's one of those events. It sells out quick, but also the auction items are incredible.
That's super cool.
Yeah, there's always great auction items. I think one of them last year, a couple of years ago, Andrew Zimmern was on, and he was talking about how like you could come watch him like record one of his shows. Like it's not auction items. You see it like every single charity. It's sweet items.
Yeah, the way that they get these are unbelievable. I always love the picture in the beginning too. We do this big photo, like group photo of all the chefs and all these sports celebrities, and it's like, you know, one year they put like Ben Lieber to my left and Devin Dubnyk to my right. It's like, guys,
correct.
You know, could you be more cruel?
Right,
I'm
correct.
5'5".
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to put these guys
Dubnyk's what, like
next
6'6" or something?
Yeah,
he's 6'6", but then who was the guy that was just in that crazy game of hockey?
Ostertag. He was like 7 feet tall.
7'2". You should have seen this guy.
Yeah.
And there was this little kid out there who won the face-off and went through his legs.
Yeah, it was sweet. Yeah, that was a great bit. Yeah.
All right, so Gavin, you've been on our show a bunch of times, but if people don't know your restaurants or why you're widely known here in the Twin Cities and obviously well beyond that, give us your list of restaurants here in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, I own Spoon and Stable, Demi, Mara and the Four Seasons, and Cook's Belcourt. We have 3 locations, one in North Loop, one in St. Paul, and one we just opened up in Edina.
So how often do Rosen and Karin show up in their bathrobes?
I'm telling you, that needs to be a T-shirt.
Yeah, see, you texted me that.
I text Sauce this,
everyone would buy that.
100%, and I think the T-shirt should be that photo, and on the bottom it should say, snuggle up with K-Fan in the morning.
Yeah, brilliant.
And I don't know, I mean, it's like, this is the State Fair T-shirt that has to be made.
He texted me that, and I was in Chicago, and I'm like, this is fucking brilliant. It has to be a T-shirt.
Look, it's Sauce. You and I have known Rosie for a long time. Here's exactly how this would go down.
Yeah.
For 24 to 48 hours, when he finds out that's a T-shirt, he would lose his shit.
Yeah,
like, you're not fucking doing that. He would yell at Abbott.
He'd have my dad call Abbott.
He would threaten, like, this is bullshit. He would be so pissed. And then thousands of shirts would sell, and everybody at the fair would be like, Rosie! And it would be all eyes on him, and he'd be like, okay, it's a pretty good shirt. Every year he complains about a shirt, and it takes him 2 days, and then he loves it.
He hated the Fraud Father shirt last year until he found out that it was maybe the best-selling State Fair T-shirt of all time.
Come on.
Loves it.
He loves it.
Yeah, of course he loves it.
Alaskan Pipeline.
Yeah, he
loved
hated
it.
that.
Loved them all. Rosen's a fraud.
That doesn't sound narcissistic at
No,
all.
correct. Yeah,
not at all.
You know it. Yeah,
No narcissism at all.
Freaking bathrobes at a spa at the Four Seasons.
I remember when he told me that was going to happen. I think he and Karin were having dinner, and he was telling me that this was going down, and I was like, why would you know what's like, you understand what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like, you know what's going to happen when this all goes public. And he's like, yeah, I just don't think it'll get out there.
Yeah.
If one photo gets out there, we all find out about it.
Wait till we screenshot that.
Oh, hey, when, and I don't need you to name names, but I'm leaning in a certain direction.
Okay.
If, let's say, a giant celebrity is in town and they want to go to your restaurant, how do they, like, are there big celebrities, and I know we've kind of asked you this before, that will just eat I don't care where you sit me, I'll come there and just eat? Or do you have some that are like, is there like an area where my team can come eat, we can come in, maybe in the back and come out and then never be really seen?
I think there's only been, that I can recall at Spoon and Stable, I think there's probably only been 2 celebrities who have ever come in the back door. Kevin Garnett was one.
Yep.
When he came back for his first Timberwolves game in forever.
Yep.
He sat in the private dining room with his whole family, and it was great. The other one that came in was Mick Jagger when the Stones were in town.
Yep.
And I cooked for him a lot in New York City, so I knew his security detail pretty well. And the way that they go into the restaurant is so smart. Like, nobody knew that he was in the restaurant. Nobody. And then there was this moment about an hour and a half into his meal where somebody at his table, I mean, it's the entire Stones band, right? So, like, if you don't know anybody in the band, you don't know that anybody is at that table. And then there was sort of like a hush in the restaurant for whatever reason, and somebody at his table laughed really loud. And so naturally you just kind of like look over at the laugh, and Mick just happened to turn his head and his face, and so everybody in the dining room could see it was him. And I was standing there, and I could feel the whole dining room go, that's Mick Jagger.
Wow.
And like nobody moved. And like everybody was done eating, they're like, we don't want the check. We're fine. We're just going to sit here. And
yeah.
It's like, well, there's nothing you can do.
At my second favorite restaurant downtown other than Spoon and Stable, Manny's, he was in there.
Yeah.
And the only request he had was, I'm not taking any pictures, and you can put my picture on the wall, but it can't be of me in the restaurant. He was like, but he came in, sat with like one other guy in one of the booths in the back. No one knew he's little, too.
Yeah, he's little. Yep.
And he just walked out. But he said, no, we're not taking any pictures with the staff, because then that draws attention.
Exactly. Yeah, no, he was always pretty, even in New York when I cooked for him a lot. He was, I mean, in New York, he would just come in the front door.
Yeah.
You know, I think he shares an art collection with John McEnroe, so he used to eat dinner a lot with John McEnroe, which was always kind of an odd.
What a rich guy thing.
Yeah, it was
we share art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay.
You know, it's funny. I don't know if it's chefs or if it's just you, but I've always said that I think gamblers have the best stories because it's just the roller coasters of finances, right? It's people are betting their livelihood. So I love living vicariously through a couple of my friends who are big time gamblers.
Yeah.
Love gambling stories. But I don't know if it's just you or chefs. I love listening to your stories, because I think when you talk about specifically celebrities and how they treat the staff or how they want to be treated, you get to see like little idiosyncrasies, like how some people are willing to walk through the front door.
Yeah.
You've mentioned some people who like to do a lap, right, to show the whole restaurant that they are there.
Yep.
Security detail, what they like to eat, how they treat the staff, how they treat the chef. Like, I don't know. I could listen to chef stories all day just for the human element of I don't know, how people treat other people. But now that I've watched both seasons of The Bear, I'm learning the craft more.
Yeah.
In a fictional sense. But you said it's you know, there's a lot of realism there. And the game of not only do you have to have world-class food, you have to be so freaking detailed.
Yeah.
Every inch of your kitchen, every inch of your restaurant, every fork, as we learned in season 2.
Yeah.
Everything has to be detailed, and that includes, all right, this is Mick Jagger. This isn't meat sauce that's, going to Demi or Spoon and Stable. This is Mick Jagger
that
who
texted
wants...
you 5 minutes before I showed up.
This is Mick Jagger who has a team with him, and now the whole staff has to be on alert. Man, the dynamics and the detail are just... It kind of blows my mind, but that's your entire life.
Yeah,
like,
it's wild.
Now, this is so weird. Now that I've watched season 2... I'm surprised you're here, because I feel like you should be working. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like we are wasting your time when you should be doing something else. Does that make sense?
I mean, the food business is nuts. But like The Bear season 2 specifically, they did a really good job. I mean, it's a very triggering, if you're in the restaurant hospitality industry, like it's a very triggering show. I mean, there are certain parts of it where, as an example, in that one, it's the last episode when he gets locked into the cooler, right?
Yeah.
and he looks up and he sees all of the tape ripped and not cut. So that's something I pick up on. But if you look at that, he's looking at all of these containers that have vegetables in it, and it's green tape, which is a very classic tribute to a restaurant in Napa called the French Laundry.
Is that where he learned?
That's where he learned. And so Thomas always bought green painter's tape because it was cheaper than buying blue painter tape. But now it's kind of all a wash. But nonetheless, the tape is ripped. Why would you rip the tape? If you rip the tape, that means you're wasting portions of the tape because you're ripping it on a weird angle. If you cut it all perfectly with straight edges, you have absolutely no waste, and you're not defining mediocrity. Why would you wake up every day and say, I'm going to rip the tape and be mediocre? Why wouldn't you just take the tape and cut it and make it perfect?
And of course, this is spoilers. Jesus. This is all spoilers, of course. So if you're listening to this, don't. If you haven't seen season 2, you probably shouldn't be listening to this.
Exactly.
But that was. I'm glad you. I didn't notice the tape part, but obviously the main message in that getting trapped in the freezer is that he feels that he has to have a perfect mindset to be a perfect right. So he realizes the girlfriend is distracting him.
Yep.
And that if his tape, I didn't catch that part, but if his tape is off, that's his fault.
So that's what it is.
That's
his
fault.
Distraction. He sees, and it's funny. I had a guest in at Spoon last night, and I was working on the pass, and she looked at me and she said, "Why are you? She's like, are you just always kind of calm in the kitchen?" And I said, "No, I'm not always calm, but I mean, honestly, like my day can be filled with meetings and radio and whatever, a million things. But the second I'm in service and I've got 250 people that I'm cooking for in front of me, it's the most peaceful part of my day. Wow. It's like when I am at the most zen of my day. And I've always recognized that if your team is going down, it's really a reflection on how you got them ready to go, right? I mean, ultimately, you're the chef. You're the one with the most experience in the kitchen. So theoretically, you should be able to go to them and sort of foreshadow that this cook is going to go down in the shit because they don't have their prep ready to go. I mean, I walked onto a station the other day, and I could tell just by the way that it was organized that they weren't ready for service 30 minutes out. And so I walked up to the sous chef, and I said, can you go please jump on that station because they're not going to be ready in 30 minutes.
Wow.
And they're like, yeah, sure. And they know, like they understand, yes, chef, I'll go and I'll just make sure that it's like it's organized, it's ready to rock and roll, and we're ready to do service. But it's just so funny because those little things that they picked up on in the show, like when Richie did all that training at that restaurant as a waiter.
Yeah.
That was a restaurant called Ever.
That's a real restaurant.
Yeah, it was my friend Curtis Duffy's restaurant.
Is it
looks spectacular.
High end?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's a real restaurant.
Dude, that's his real kitchen. So he had a restaurant called Grace. And actually, I don't think his documentary's out anymore, but he had a documentary out called For Grace. And it was on Netflix. Anyways, his story is insane. He was, as a little boy, he's growing up. I think he grew up in Indiana or Ohio. I can't remember. But anyways, both of his parents were murdered in an attempted break-in and robbery to his house.
Jesus.
And he was a little boy. And so he goes, the whole documentary is like how he worked through this incredibly horrific and traffic and trauma-triggering experience as a child and how that eventually shaped him as a person and as a dad and as a chef later on in life. And I met Curtis probably 19 years ago when he was the pastry chef, or he was a sous chef at a restaurant called Alenia in Chicago. A guy named Grant Ackett is the owner of that one. So Curtis was working there for a long time. He ended up leaving, opened up Grace. He closed Grace. He had an issue with his investors, and then he opened up Ever. And the whole purpose of Ever is like there's no walls. No wall has a sharp angle. Every wall is curved. And you see that when Richie walks into the restaurant, like you see all these curved walls. Everything's very intentional. And so it's crazy to just sort of see that restaurant in that moment. But like when she's expediting and she's like, and all of that's going on, like that's 100% reality when you expedite a restaurant.
All right, let me throw a bunch of things that I saw in season 2, and I just want to get your take on the reality factor, how close it is, and how you've experienced things like this. When Richie goes through his training, right, he kind of understands now what it takes to be world class, and he finally realizes like I can't half-ass this either. If I want to get up off my ass, since he's losing the wife's gonna remarry, like his life's falling apart. He's like, if I'm gonna be serious, I got to go all in. And he gets back to Carmi's restaurant, and he's like, all right, now this is serious. And he does that interview, and he basically says, we can't hire her because she didn't realize that the napkin or whatever was in the wrong spot.
Mm-hmm.
The
fork was misplaced on the napkin.
Right, and he was like, how can you sit here for 20 minutes and not change that?
Couldn't agree more.
So have you ever fucked with somebody and had a test like that? Like,
I do it all the time. I put blue tape on the floor. So the blue tape that we label things, I'll just take a sticker of blue tape and I'll put it on the floor and see how many people walk past it and not pick it up. Why wouldn't you pick up the blue tape? You know it doesn't belong on the floor.
Oof.
Just pick it up and throw it away.
So is that in the interview process, or is that
just
current
every day.
Employees?
Just
like,
every
let's
day.
just see how many people don't see it.
And it's not a test, or it's not like
Sure.
it's not like a threat to test them. It's just like, what are we doing here? Like how do we want to make sure that we are getting better collectively as a group? What I loved about his character in particular was once he puts on the suit, he kind of becomes Superman.
Yeah.
And that's also like a very real like restaurant thing. Like you have two personas. You have your persona as who you are, but like when you put on your chef coat or you put on your suit and then you're in service, like it's a show. Like the show must go on. The act is there. Everything's about it. And it's so true. But I thought that was such a great point out of like, how did they not fix the napkin with the fork? Like It's been there for 20 minutes. And it is a very true detail because we've all been out to eat where like, you're out of water and 4 people walk past you with a water pitcher, but they don't stop and fill up your water. And you're just like, I'm thirsty, right?
Yeah.
Like, can I just get some water? And it's those little, what's the thing with the restaurant business is it's all of those little things that add up to a much bigger thing. So even when we get complaints at our restaurant, I'll read the complaints and it's like, it starts with one thing and it's just this domino effect of issues. But it was the one thing that triggered it. And then we failed on 6 other things. And it happens. Like, you're going to open up every day and somebody's going to walk out and say, it's not worth the hype. It wasn't that good. It was this. And it's like, but you just got to try to be better.
But it's a little bit like the fly in Breaking Bad, right? Walter White did not want the fly in his meth room because if the fly gets into his batch, the whole batch is fucked, right? You can't do that. So I love the concept of even a piece of blue tape on the floor. It doesn't mean that the meal's going to suck. It's just the principle of we have to be ultra detailed.
Just how do we be better?
And the other a couple of the other scenes that I thought were fascinating was when Richie is sitting in on that meeting, and they are sitting around the table breaking down tonight's meal like it's a football game, right? We have these people, this people, this, they're celebrating this. They're going through it like they've broken down film, and it's 15 of them sitting in there going, all right, are we all freaking ready? Here's the game plan, break, go.
Yep.
And Richie's kind of overwhelmed, like, holy shit, you guys are unbelievably prepared. And then, of course, when he gets back to the other restaurant, it's, all right, no more messing around. I wear suits now.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yeah,
so talk about that pre-meal meeting. I assume you have those every night at every restaurant you own.
Yeah, pre-shifts. So we do a couple of things. I mean, we have a pre-shift meeting, so you have that before dinner service. Everybody's in the room. You're going through every reservation. You're walking through the names. You're communicating notes that you have on the guest, their preferences. So and so sitting down. They want, the gentleman requires sparkling water. The lady requires still, and they're writing that down. So in that way, you're not going to the table and saying, "Would you like still water or sparkling water?" You already know that. Okay, the gentleman likes sparkling and the lady likes still. So just bring that.
Man,
all those little finite details of what that they want. And then we have a whole other program, what's called Dream Weaving, which you saw a little bit in the story too, or a little bit in the show as well, about the pizza bit.
Yeah.
And so Will Guidara, there was the book that says on unreasonable hospitality that he opens up at one point. That's a book written by Will Guidara, who's a dear friend, and he was an owner of a restaurant in New York City. And his whole point of the book, even when he wrote it, was like, how do you come up with these really unreasonable opportunities of hospitality that a guest has no idea that they want? And you exceed those. So he does the pizza.
Yep.
And I remember being in New York once. We had these 4 guests. They were sitting on table 10, which was the table right when you walked into the restaurant, not from New York. The captain overheard them say, God, we had so many incredible experiences while we were here in New York City. The one thing we forgot to get was one of those street hot dogs.
Yeah.
And so he came back and he said, Chef, they want a street hot dog. And I said, okay, Madhu, who was one of my runners, I said, run down to the corner, grab 4 street hot dogs for me real quick. Hold on entrees. So instead of them getting their main course, I walked out there with 4 hot dogs wrapped in foil, and they said, what is this? I said, it's the street hot dogs you forgot to get. Let's have those before them. And it's like their mind is kind of blowing, like, wait a minute. Because it's not about you going this extra mile or whatever. It's about the fact that you're listening. You're paying attention to what it is.
That's the note passing bit, too. That actually happens as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's called a chit. We call it a soigné. And so all of the information is on these little notes, and so you know what's going on. Everybody sort of has these different moments. There's a restaurant in outside of D.C. where they actually rate the guest. So it's 1 out of, I think the scale is 1 out of 10. 10 being obviously the best. You know, and so it's about your mood. How do you walk in? How's your energy? So like, let's say Sauce walks in, and it's like, okay, his energy's a 4. Everyone's gonna go
generous.
Right, that's generous, right? Everyone's gonna go.
So he's
around
having
and
a
say,
good day.
He's having a good day.
Yeah.
Rosie walks in and like, he's a 2 because someone's wearing his T-shirt.
Yeah, and he might have to pick up the tab.
Oh,
yeah.
then he's a 1.
Yeah, then he's a 1.
He's not even there if he's going to pick up the tab.
He's not even there.
No, right.
But they'll rate you. So they'll say, okay, Sauce is a 4, and then everybody goes around and says, all right, how do we bring the 4 to the 8?
Yeah.
What do we have to do? What are the little things, the little moments of hospitality, the little majestic moments that can bring this guest there? So it was just, I mean, it's crazy. Those parts of that show are like dead on.
So I think I've told you the story in the past, but as a guy that eats like I'm 5, and again, that's offensive to 5-year-olds.
Which, because I'm on this show with you often, I have to like explain to people, because they ask me in the restaurants after I do these shows, people be like, oh, I love when you're on Kaysen. And they'll be like, does Corey really not? I'm like, listen.
Yep.
I'm like, he doesn't eat this way, but you have to understand, this is not like a bit. It's not like,
it's a psychological
reality. And I tell people all the
disaster.
time, I'm like, you know, this is not like him just saying it on radio because he thinks it's funny. And they're like, oh, we thought it was. And I was like, no, I understand that, but it's not.
No,
it's
and
not.
I used to have people accuse me of doing this because they thought I was cool.
Yeah.
Like, who thinks this is cool? This is like the douchiest persona ever to eat like I'm 5.
Yeah, you are correct.
But again, as a guy that in general I haven't spent a lot of time in world-class restaurants because that menu doesn't fit my style, right?
Yeah.
But since I've been dating my girlfriend/wife now for 14 years, I don't know, a long time, 10 years ago almost now, she wanted to go to Travail. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to eat there, but it's for you. Let's go.
Yeah.
So, and I think I've told you this story, but the pizza scene in Bear Season 2 reminded me of this. So they start, bringing the courses one at a time. And, of course, after about 3 times where the plate gets dropped off, I don't touch it, and they take it, clearly, like you're just talking about, the server had said to the chef, he's not eating anything, right? Yeah. The guy at seat 2 on table 4 is like 0 for 3. So they walked back to me and they're like, is there anything wrong? And I'm like, no, I just eat like I'm 5. Don't worry about me. I'm just here to drink. And they asked me what I liked, and I'm like, look, I'm a chicken finger and fry guy, so don't worry about me. And even though I only ate about half of them because the presentation freaked me out a lot, he spent the rest of the night, when other waves of food came out, it was chicken fingers kind of like on like sticks. Then it was like cut up almost like chicken, like popcorn chicken. Like every wave had a different kind of chicken finger, and some of them honestly just grossed me out. But they tried. It was like a challenge. It was, how can I make chicken fingers fun the rest of the night? Loved the attempt, and I told him that. I'm like, dude, you didn't have to do that. That was super cool.
Yeah.
And I've had that in my head now for 10 years.
It's awesome.
Even though it wasn't my favorite chicken, they tried. I liked about half of it. And I told Angie, I'm like, this is unbelievable. I'm like, is this how the world works for normal people? This is awesome. So when I saw the pizza scene in Bear Season 2, not only did the chef just, take the pizza, like made art out of it, right? Like, how do I make this pizza mine, but still give them that Chicago deep dish that I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the fun part. That is the fun part of our business.
Yeah,
because you get
creativity.
Yeah, and you get a lot of people that come up and they're just like, "Look, I'm surrendering to you. Like I want you to cook for us, and I want you to do what you do." And then you get some people that come in and they're like, I don't want any of that. I want a chicken tender.
Yeah,
and you're like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to change this? How do we make this part of ours? And how do we make this part of their experience? And it's just like those little tiny moments that like. Somebody remembers that for 10 years. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll never forget that experience as long as you live. And so now you correlate that restaurant with that experience. And for that reason, it's an incredible space to go to. And you'll always say, no, it's really cool. They're fun. They're creative. They go out of their way for us. They care.
Yep. So one other thing that I wanted to mention that I just assume, I guess I never assumed it happened until I saw Season 2 was when they were struggling to get the staff hired.
Yeah.
The poaching accusations.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Where they're in the alley and all of a sudden he's like, hey, basically get out of here, no poaching.
Yeah. What the fuck you doing?
Yeah. How often is that an issue where maybe not because there's a problem staffing, but how often is it almost like NBA free agency where, Gavin, either it's a chef or a front of restaurant staffer there's talent somewhere else in the Twin Cities, and you're like, how do we steal them and get them here? That's the kind of person I need on my team.
I mean, it certainly happens. It happens less. Thankfully, it happens less than it seems. A lot of us have so much respect for each other that we'll get a resume and we'll see that, they're working at X restaurant right now, and we'll call and say, when Bachelor Farmer was open as an example, and Eric Dayton and his team owned that. Eric and I kind of had this pact, listen, we're not going to poach from each other. We're across the street from one another. So if somebody applies from Spoon to Bachelor Farmer or vice versa, just give a courtesy call and say, hey, so-and-so applied. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Is everything okay? And they'll say, oh, I didn't know that they were applying, or, yeah, no, it's good. We've encouraged them to go and work somewhere else, and this is a good spot for them because they've been here for 3 years, and they're not going to go up the ladder, whatever it might be. And so it's just, honestly, it's a matter of communication. I've never gone into an alleyway, or I've never even gone into a restaurant and been like, wow, I'm going to poach this person. I've definitely gone to restaurants that had incredible service by people and said, whenever you're interested in moving on, we would love to have you apply at Spoon and Sable, but we're not hiring now. I mean, I would say that for sure, because there are some people that are just, they get it, and they're so amazing at what it is that they do. But
that's a fine line, though, right? It's almost like a gray area of, I'm not making you an offer, but I'm extending an arm.
Yeah, I'm extending my hospitality to you. That whenever you feel it's as though it's time to find something else, great. But a lot of servers work usually 2 jobs, like maybe 3 days at one restaurant, 2 days at another restaurant, or something like that, just to kind of mix it up, right? So maybe you can pick them up for that. I don't know, but it's in those fine dining, super high end echelon restaurants, Demi being one of them for sure, and Spoon to a degree on that. It's hard to have those 2 jobs. I mean, we require you to know a lot of knowledge.
Wow. What are parts of the show that aren't realistic, or did they do such a good job that I would assume that they had some maybe people who work in the restaurant? Well, that one guy, hold on, I had his name right here. Matty Matheson, right?
Yeah.
He actually owns a bunch of restaurants.
Yeah, he's
Doesn't
a friend
he,
of
the
mine.
big guy?
Yeah, he lives in Toronto.
Yeah. So do you think
which guy?
Matty Matheson, the big fat tattooed guy.
Neil.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
He's a real
He's a real chef.
guy?
In Toronto.
No shit.
Yeah. I think you weren't here, but he brought that up when we talked
really?
about the first season.
Yeah. So I met him in Toronto.
He's a good actor.
He is.
But he has to help, right? Like he's probably like, dude, that doesn't fucking happen.
And they have a really
restaurant.
good. They just did an article. It was either in Vanity Fair or GQ. They just did an article on their food stylist, who I think came from the restaurant Ever in Chicago, who helped with a lot of stuff. The one thing that's definitely not realistic is how do they spend $500,000 and get that restaurant? Right. Because they're like, oh, it was $500,000. I'm like,
it would cost way more than that.
Right.
I don't think it cost. Listen, I can tell you, I've done a lot of construction stuff.
Yeah.
That's not $500,000, but it's okay.
Way more.
I mean, that was one that you're just like, there's no way. But otherwise, they did a really good job. I mean, the intentionality of sending out. They sent out that one chef to Copenhagen to do the stage.
Yeah. Is that a real place?
The restaurant, I don't know the restaurant that he was at, but he walked through a restaurant called Noma, if you remember that, and he just kind of looked around. Noma is owned by a guy named Rene Redzepi, who worked at the French Laundry years ago, probably 25 years ago. And Noma has been the #1 restaurant in the world 3 different times. And it was interesting that they went to Copenhagen for that, because in our business, Copenhagen has had a lot of controversial things written about it, specifically in Wall Street Journal. And I think Financial Times wrote an article about how these young cooks go to Copenhagen to do what's called an educational stage, and they end up working for free for months. And so the whole article kind of blew up like, wait a minute, is our culinary profession in Copenhagen being supported by free labor?
Yeah.
Right? And what does that mean and why? So there was this huge article written about it. So I know a lot of people wrote after they saw that episode, like, wait a minute, why are they going to Copenhagen knowing that this came out? So that was a little bit like, kind of, okay, that's interesting. But that whole part is really, that's true. I mean, the whole idea of going out, doing a stage, getting this education from somebody else. I mean, I did that certainly when I was a young cook, and we do that for a lot of people now.
All right. So, by the way, again, back to your time. I have no idea how much time you have, so you let us know when you have to go, but I have a bunch of other questions. So, specifically that pastry chef guy who was in Copenhagen, whose character's name is completely escaping me right now.
Yeah.
With the mother who's dying. There were a bunch of times in the first 2 seasons, he'll try something, right, and Carmi tastes it, and then gives him the look like, God dang, you got something here. Mm-hmm. And again, as a guy that doesn't eat normally, it looks like it's a invention, right? Not just like a variation. Like Carmine has the look on his face like this has never been done before. How, is that realistic as well? Where people are literally saying, "I'm going to try something that's never been done," or
I think his reaction is probably more to the fact of like
you nailed
it.
Okay,
you've nailed acidity to fat to solidity. Like you've got all of those flavors right. So like it's acidically perfect. It's got enough fat to it. You seasoned it correctly. Texturally, it's right. And I think, like when we're cooking or when someone's cooking behind me and then they plate or pass the food up for me to plate it, I'll taste it and it's like, within a second, like of putting it in your mouth, like, okay, it needs more acid, it needs more salt. Like it's just your palate becomes so hyper aware. That's why before I go into tastings with my team, I always eat lunch. I never go into a tasting, starving, because if you go into a tasting starving, it's no different than going grocery shopping hungry. You're like, I'm going to buy everything. I'm so hungry. Like, this looks great. The donuts look great. The chips look great. So you go to the restaurant and you do a tasting. You're like, okay, I'm very hyper aware. So that's really what it is. It's him being like, yeah, you nailed that.
I thought that part was fascinating. Just, again, he's like, he comes back from Europe so proud, like, I have this.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, Mike, did he just reinvent the wheel?
Yeah.
But I guess it's more of just, again, Carmine finally being like, that was worth the time over in Europe. That was worth the money. Like, you nailed it.
Yeah.
The other thing that they have really hammered on in the first 2 seasons is the dynamic between, what is her name now? I haven't watched it in 2 weeks, and I'm blanking on the main female's name.
No, hold on.
What is her name?
Her name is Sydney.
Sydney, yeah. So when Sid and Carmine are constantly arguing or fighting, they get that like sign language, like I love you symbol in season 2. It's like, all right, we're mad right now, but this is just about the business. This is not personal. I assume that's in all walks of life. I think our show's kind of shit at that. We like to be very insecure and I don't know, defensive.
Yeah.
How do you, as the head guy, that's your job, right, Gavin? You're the leader. You're Carmine in this situation. How do you deal with employees where ultimately they know it's your vision, but you respect their vision, but you guys got to battle it out and hash that out in the moment? How does that work?
Sometimes it's a balance where you just don't do it in the moment, and you just pull away and you say, okay, I know what it's like to be on the other side of this because I've worked for the guy too.
Yep.
So I'm just going to take a deep breath. I'm going to come back to them in a day. I'm going to come back to them in 5 hours and talk to them about it and say, like, think about it, and what you're trying to do in that time is you're trying to explain the 30,000-foot view of the business.
The blue tape detail.
Yeah, and of what you're trying to create. It's like, look, I know this one dish that you thought of, you think is lights out, but none of the guests like it. So what can we do to change it? Like, we've got to rip apart our ego a little bit, tear it down and say, like, and there are dishes that I've created where I'm like, oh, my God, I love this dish. It's so good. You put it on the menu and people just don't like it and they don't order it. And you're like, wow, really? Like, where did I drop the ball on that one? And sometimes it's just like it's either too chefy, right? It's like just kind of over everybody's head. Or sometimes it's just like it's really just not that great. And that's okay to make the mistake. The difficulty is when you make that mistake, then you don't have anybody that like edits it. I look at my job kind of as an editor in a way where they'll come to me with a menu. They'll come to me with a dish. They'll come to me with whatever it is. And they'll say, okay, what do you think? And you have to sort of edit thinking about all of the different type of people you're cooking for and the experiences that you're going to have. Because you're going to have somebody like Sauce who will show up, 3 times a week and get the same dish, so they'll understand the consistency. Or you'll have somebody that'll save up 6 months for that one dish.
Yep.
Right. And so like you want to be able to deliver for that person that's there on the 6 month and the person that's there 3 days a week. And so it's a fucking balance.
Wow.
It's just a balance.
So
it's nonstop.
I would argue the thesis statement, the point of season 2 was really laid out at the end that you have to love this or you're in the wrong business, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You have to love serving other people the same way Jamie Lee Curtis, even though she fucking complained.
That
episode was unbelievable.
That's one of the best episodes of any TV show I've ever seen.
And I'll tell you, like, that was the most triggering episode for so many people.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter who you are, what kind of family you were raised in,
or
whatever.
What part of the family.
Or what part of the family. Like, you watch it and you're just like, everybody's had that moment in their life of like, holy fuck, like this is really happening.
Yeah.
But yes, you have to love it. And what I loved about the last episode that it really told you was what the camaraderie of this business can give you. Like, you look at all of these people in that kitchen where, like, at one moment, Sydney's got it. She's got it under control, and then she loses it. It's gone. She can't handle it. Carmen's stuck in the fucking freezer, so he can't fix anything. So he's completely out of control. And then Richie comes in and steps up, the big brother out of nowhere who you think is a total shit case. Mm-hmm. And he puts everything together, and all of a sudden you see the whole kitchen just stop, and it's like you can feel, like, as somebody who knows what that feeling is like, to like pull yourself out of the weeds and get through a successful service. We had that at Spoon a couple of years ago. We had a New Year's Eve service that was like that. It was just like chaotic, difficult. It was one of the hardest services. And I just remember grabbing the pass, and I was like, okay, I got it. Let's go. And a couple of the employees came up to me afterwards, like, how did you get through that so calm? And I'm like, there's only one option to get through.
You have to.
That's it.
You have to.
That's your only option.
Yeah.
If you walk in and start screaming and yelling and throwing shit, what do you expect everybody to do?
It's over.
Yeah. It's over. They're going to be like, fuck this, I'm out of here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. I'm with them. So that was a huge reality of that show. It's like, okay, let's get into the camaraderie of it too.
Yeah.
You got to be built for it.
It's just weird. I'm just loving learning about the game theory of restaurateurs.
Yeah.
Right? The minutia, like every detail, the strategy, the teamwork. It's just, I felt so naive before these last 2 seasons of understanding how it worked. It's like, sure, you got to have good food, you got to have a good chef, hospitality. I had no idea it was this deep, if this is close to reality, and it sounds like it is.
Yeah, because they pick up on a lot of insecurities too.
Yeah.
You know, like the one it's like Carm kind of has that. I don't remember the guy in the corner who told him that his food was terrible or whatever, and he like envisions that guy there. Like, those insecurities are real. I mean,
Joel McHale, right?
Yeah, it's
his former
that
teacher
was
or chef
or boss or something.
He was the boss of that one restaurant that Carm worked at.
The first,
he got fired,
super high
first season, like world class restaurant.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's, it's true. It's like, you're putting yourself out there every single night, and you have to accept, like, people are going to walk out and say it wasn't good. How are you going to react to that?
But you got to believe you're good enough too, right? And that's the older gentleman in season 2, right, that starts to doubt himself when he's at school and he's like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Yeah, it's so good.
And that, I think, is the kind of the point of the end of the season is, if your heart's not in it, you're not going to be able to keep up with the rest of the team that still cares, right? They still have drive. The dude's missing the death of his mother, right? Carmi's willing to potentially throw away his diehard long-term crush. Like, Sid's dad, who initially sounded like he wasn't thrilled about her going into food because it wasn't a career. He's starting to come around because he sees that she's all in, and he respects the all-in factor, even if it's not the choice he would have made. Everybody's all in except for older guys. Like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can clean forks at 5 o'clock in the morning. Right? Yeah. It's not my lifestyle anymore. Man, at season 2, I told Sauce I was a little not bored. I was a little concerned the first half of the season.
I'm with you.
You were too?
Yep, I was too. The first 3 episodes, I was like, I don't know. I wasn't into, because it didn't have that. It didn't have that high energy pace and sort of that stress.
It just felt like HGTV. It felt like I was watching a renovation of a kitchen. I'm like, I don't know if I care. And then
all of a sudden, once Jamie Lee Curtis's episode came in, it was like, all right, this whole season just shifted.
I can't get over how good that episode.
And everything made sense, right? Yeah. You saw why Richie's the way that he is, why Carmi's the way that he is, why Jamie Lee Curtis was the way that she is, why he cares so much about perfection and attention to detail. Just absolute home run final, 4-ish or 5-ish episodes. Nailed it at the end.
Even the scene where I think the guy, it's his sister's husband who's in all those Don't Turn Into Your Parents commercials, where he meets Jamie Lee Curtis outside of the restaurant. Yes. And she's so fucking self-conscious because her kids have finally done something, but she, like you said, like you get into this, so many weird things have happened in their life that she doesn't want to fuck it up by showing up. Yep. That's so heartbreaking. Yep. Like, she's proud, but she can't be proud because, like, she's let them down so many times. And wrecked every fucking Christmas they've ever had, and she's been such a disaster to them, and their brother's dead. She can't bring herself into the restaurant. That's such a heartbreaking scene. And even the brother-in-law, like, can't get over it.
It's like she realizes she's the kryptonite.
Correct. Yes.
You know, if she walks in that door,
it's
just
over.
her aura is going to bring everything down.
Yeah.
When in all reality, all they want to do is see her just walk through the door.
Yeah. They just want her to sit down and enjoy it.
That's it.
They do
and
it
respect
all for her.
what they've accomplished and how far they've come, right?
Yeah.
Hey, one other thing that I should have asked you half an hour ago, because it was earlier in the season, but the obsession with, like, the gas leak or the potential gas leak, right? Or the balloon
with
bit?
the balloon.
Obviously, they highlighted a lot, like, we have to get this up to code before the restaurant opens or we're never going to get the permit. Do you constantly deal with rules and regulation? Are you you have to be concerned about every single code almost daily, or how often does that jump into your head?
Well, I mean, the code stuff is basically done once you build it, because you go through all of that stuff when you build it. So when you're going through pre-construction phase, construction phase, and then final sign-off, 100% you're worried about every little detail. Like, you know, is that floor okay? Is the trim on the baseboards going to be okay? Is that washable, scrubbable? Like, all of these little tiny things that are just so fascinating. And what's really difficult is that every city has a different code. So if I build a restaurant in Wayzata, that's different than building a restaurant in Minneapolis in terms of its code. So you're dealing with two different codes.
Wow.
You know, and so
you're learning on the fly a little bit as well?
Yeah, well, your contractor's helping you.
Okay.
I mean, if you have a good contractor, which we're grateful to have always had, you know, they help you. And they're like, this is exactly how you follow the code. And then once you're open, it's just a matter of, you know, following what you already know in terms of, like, health codes and, you know, food safety and things like that. But, you know, like me and the team, I mean, we take classes on that stuff.
So in my lame day and a half or so of just sitting in my hotel room in Las Vegas working on initials, I caught a little bit of Ocean's 13. Ever seen it?
Maybe. I feel like I have. Probably on a plane.
I'll give you the short of it. But Al Pacino is opening a new casino called The Bank. And he's obsessed with winning a 5-diamond award. Basically, just for class, top to bottom, from rooms down to restaurants, right? And part of the scam that the Ocean's crew runs is ruining the guy who's there to actually review it, right? They're trying to make his experience as worst as possible, and then they have an imposter that Pacino thinks is the actual reviewer, right? So, of course, once Pacino identifies him, it's basically, what can I do for you, right? Lays out, like, the red carpet for the 5-diamond reviewer guy. Do you get heads ups at all when restaurant critics or any kind of, I don't know if Consumer Reports is the right phrase, but do you know when people are in the restaurant specifically to judge you?
Not always, but sometimes, yeah. I mean, you know, I remember in New York, I mean, this is over 10 years ago, the critics were anonymous then. They're kind of like, they're less anonymous now, just based on the fact that social media is out there, but there was a huge wave of critics sort of having this coming out party all over the country years ago to basically say, like, we're done being anonymous. We're just going to show up. The one anonymous guide that still exists is the Michelin Guide, which we don't have here in Minnesota. New York has it. California has it. 3 cities in Florida have it. Chicago has it. I think D.C. has it.
Why is it limited to just those areas?
The tourism board of those states and cities pay for the offset of the labor to rate you, because it's a tourism guide. I mean, the whole reason that book was created in France in the 1900s was because Michelin, the tire company, gave you a book of where to eat all around in France with your brand new tires on your car, so you could drive around France and eat at all the places that they rated excellent, and then come back and buy new tires. Pretty smart.
Pretty smart.
So, you know, it's a tourism thing, and I wish, if anybody's listening from the state of Minnesota, that they would pay for this, because it would be important for our state and for our city. That's probably the only guide that's really still anonymous. It is the only guide.
And it's literally one man. It's one guy, or you don't know?
It's hundreds and hundreds of people.
Hundreds, okay.
Hundreds of people around the country that will go in and eat at your restaurant. And you can either get 1 star, 2 stars, or 3 stars. To attain, I don't know, we could look up how many 3-star Michelin restaurants there are in the world. I'm going to guess there might be 80 in the world. Think how many restaurants are in the world.
Sure.
So 3 stars, to get 3-star Michelin, it's the most difficult rating to achieve ever. And it's
137 according to
there
this.
you go. 137.
Yeah.
Man.
Where's the closest one?
To us?
Yeah.
Chicago. Alenia has 3 stars, and Ever, which was in the show.
Is that where Rosie basically said, get lost?
No, that was Nobu.
I think Ever's got 2, or I think it has 3, actually. So Chicago's got some stars that you can go eat at. But it's, I mean, that system. And I remember being in New York, and, you'd get like a single diner to show up, and the captain would come back, or the waiter, and say, chef, single diner on table 11. I think it's Michelin. It's okay, guys. Everybody, Michelin's on table 11, please.
Just on the odd chance that it might be.
Just on the odd chance that it's Michelin. You have no idea, but it's like.
So single diner's almost always a red flag that something might be up?
At that time, it was like that was the red flag.
Super rare?
Yep. And so we're like, all right, single diner, it's going to be Michelin. Take care of them. Extra PPX, extra VIP. You don't send extra things per se, but you're just staying focused. And, instead of cooking, if you order a halibut, instead of cooking 1 fish, we cook 2. And then you take the more perfect of the 2 and throw the other one away. Things like that.
Wow.
It's all those.
I'm going to start showing up to your restaurant just by myself in a Michelin tire hat.
You lost that a long time.
Just my hat.
Show up dressed as the Michelin Man.
Yeah, I should.
That'd be the actual
the
mascot, but Bendham or whatever his name is, and just sit there and eat.
He shows up as the Michelin.
I am from Michelin. We get it, Paul.
Yeah, we get it, Paul. We know. No, you're not. Shut up. Sit down.
Sit down and just enjoy.
Yeah. Quickly, because we've gone almost 50 minutes on this. What are some non-restaurants you own around the area that you recommend?
Oh, I like Young Joni.
Young Joni's great.
Young Joni's great.
What do they do? What kind of food?
She does. So it's Korean influence, but her pizzas are really good.
Yeah, super good.
I love her sweet potato dish that she does up front. I don't know if she's still doing the whole fish, but she does a whole fish that's always been delicious that I love. I've been to, where did I just go? Guy No, which is in Loring Park. Ann Ahmed just opened that. Really, really delicious.
Hey, while you're listening, let me stop you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but so the restaurant that you mentioned in Chicago that's real, but they let Richie train there in season 2. There was kind of that understanding, like, no, we're trying to help you out because we like you. We've always liked you.
Yeah.
So when you go to Young Joni, and it sounds like you love that place, do you go out of your way before you leave to say, like, hey, I'm here, if they didn't know that you were there? And if they don't know who you are or that you were there, do you say, like, hey, by the way, I'm Gavin and I do this and you guys are phenomenal, or do you just get out of there and leave?
No, if I'm walking past the kitchen, I just say thank you and give them a head nod and say, thanks for dinner, it was delicious.
And if they know you, they know you, and if they don't, they don't.
And it's okay.
Do you ever reach out to other restaurants in the Twin Cities and be like, by the way, just heads up, I was there last Thursday, phenomenal service, phenomenal food.
Oh, yeah.
That happens often?
Yeah.
We get that team mentality?
Yeah. And I mean, it's pretty common to show up in restaurants, especially, I mean, it's a small town, right? So, like, you show up to a restaurant in our community here, it's pretty common that they'll know who you are when you walk in, just based on everything that we've sort of done. And so then, and it's not that necessarily things change or get different for you. But it's just a way to experience a beautiful space.
See, because I'm just trying to make weird analogies so my mind can understand how this stuff works. But if I'm a restaurant in the Twin Cities and you walk into my restaurant, I start shitting my pants, right? It would be like golfing with Tiger Woods if you're an amateur golfer. It'd almost be like, fuck, Gavin's here.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. You would be the Michelin guy for my restaurant. I'd be like, all right, we got to give Gavin the world-class treatment. Otherwise, he's going to say this restaurant sucks ass.
Quit the clown show.
Let's go get him the deep dish pizza and the street hot dog. Exactly. Gavin wants the works. Yeah, I would feel like if they know who you are, it's a little bit of extra pressure. It's we got a pro here. Let's show them what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't go out a ton to necessarily notice it per se, but sometimes I'll go out and I can hear people saying like, oh, Gavin's on table, whatever, and I can hear them talking about it and what they're saying, and my kids are much more outspoken when it comes to being like.
My dad's here.
No, those like I remember we went to a restaurant.
That would be awesome.
We went to a restaurant and we were in Palm Springs. I think we were at the Ace Hotel and we sat down for lunch and we ordered lunch and it took forever to get like I'm talking an hour and 15 minutes for just fucking appetizers. And I was like, okay, listen, my kids they were younger at the time, my 2 older boys, and they're starving. And when kids are starving, there's nothing worse.
They're nightmares.
Right? And then you're starving as a parent. You're like, I can't keep the shit together. The server comes up and says, listen, I'm really sorry. The kitchen's backed up. The pool's super busy. There's an event. They're trying to get out of it. And my middle son, Julius, looks up at the server and says, my dad's a really good chef. Would you like him to go help?
Oh, my God.
And he's 7.
Love it.
He says it in such an innocent way.
So he wasn't being sarcastic.
Not at all. He was like,
can Dad hop
can
in
we
there
help? Like, there's something we can do to help.
That's awesome.
That's sweet.
And the server was like, you're a chef? And I said, yes, in Minnesota, I have a couple of restaurants there. I said, listen, could you just do me a favor? Can you just grab like 3 or 4 carrots out of the walk-in and just bring them to my kids? They can eat something. Mm-hmm. She's like, you got it. She brought out like a plate full of, raw vegetables. But it was just like, you got to be kidding me.
That's awesome.
Lastly, this is the last one for me. So my brother is a huge fan of diners, drive-ins, and dives.
Yeah.
And the one thing Guy Fieri won't eat, he doesn't like eggs. He doesn't like any form of egg. And like there was an episode where like the woman made something extremely good that had eggs in it, and he ate it. Is there something you don't like?
I don't know if there's anything necessarily I don't like. No, honestly, I don't have like a repulsive reaction to that. Like I know Andrew Zimmern, he cannot eat walnuts.
Oh, really?
He'll eat. I mean, he eats like
fucking
goat
bugs.
ass.
Yeah,
he
eats goat ass.
But he
That's
does.
the State Fair T-shirt.
Yeah.
Mark Rosen and Andrew Zimmern will eat goat ass.
Why couldn't we get Rosie to say eat goat ass?
Maybe we can.
Yeah,
you probably should.
Yeah, he eats like
he eats crazy shit, but he will not eat walnuts.
Weird.
That's weird.
So it's not like an allergy or anything. It's just he just doesn't
won't.
like them.
Like my old chef, he won't eat bananas.
All right, one last kind of
Sucker.
variation, then we'll let you go because we've had you almost an hour. We're wasting your time. You got to get back to the detail in the blue tape.
I got to go pick up blue tape.
You mentioned earlier that you once in a while you have to be self-aware and realize that a dish that you tried didn't work, right? And you got to start over from scratch. What is the ingredient that you think you try the most that gets rejected from the masses that you think is better than the masses?
Usually
do?
sardines or anchovies.
That you love them, but you just can't find ones that most people like.
I love fresh sardines.
Mm-hmm. Oh, are you high?
Sounds awful.
I love fresh sardines and grilled, and then you put them on like a piece of toast that's got like an eggplant caponata on the bottom. Sauce. You're kicked out of the restaurant.
I would eat that.
Yeah, kick them out.
No.
What do you mean you wouldn't eat it? You would for sure try it.
I'd try it, but long story short.
If I didn't tell you what it was.
No, I would try it for sure. But like my mom's dad fucking loved sardines when she was a kid.
But it was probably the can.
Of course.
Yeah, that shit's terrible.
Yeah.
Like a fresh sardine.
Like sardines on Caesar salads.
You see what I'm saying?
Anchovies.
See?
Icky.
This is it. This is what it's like this. And I get it. Like we all grew up with that shit. Like the anchovies and the sardines in the can or the jar or the tin. And it's
don't you think it's also it's like ingrained in our cartoon culture, right?
Totally.
Those were always the stereotypical like Bugs Bunny, like gross food.
100%.
So I wonder how much of it's just like you said, if you had just given it the sauce and said this is you make up some other fish name that's exotic from Thailand.
Yeah.
Try this sauce.
I would try.
If you don't say sardines,
I had
wonder
the
if it
same
works.
reaction as sauce about sardines before I had a fresh sardine out of the water, grilled, and then put on. Then I was like, "Holy shit, this is a sardine!"
So, how often do sardines end up on any of your menus?
Never,
almost never, or literally never.
Literally, like
never,
almost never. Yeah, I mean, we live in the middle of the country. We're landlocked, and so we eat cartoonish now. Like we grew up thinking, like I don't eat a ton of fish. Like I love meat, I like beef, I like pork. Things like. I mean, I remember my first complaint at Spoon and Stable was you don't cook with enough pork, and I'm like, okay, sorry. Like you need to cook with more meat. You're in the Midwest now. I'm like, got it. And I get it. I 100% get it. But, man, fresh sardines on toast, lights out.
Dude, this is an hour of your time, man. I really appreciate it. I could talk to you all day.
You're the best,
I don't even eat any
you're
of this shit, and I still love asking about it. It's crazy. You're the best, Gavin.
Thanks guys.
Dude. So, all right, where are the restaurants again? What are the names, and where can people find them?
Spoon and Stable, Demi, Mara at the Four Seasons, and Any at Cook's Belcourt, St. Paul, North Loop, and Market Street, Any Dinah.
Anything else in the works? You got anything else you want to maybe break? Anything?
I got nothing to break. I got a lot in the works. I got a lot of things in the air. We just got to see what's going to stick.
Awesome. Love it, dude. Thanks, dude.
All right, guys.
Yeah, you're the best.